East Asia, 230 BC. After centuries of bloodshed, a warrior king rises to unite 7 warring kingdoms into one empire. The King of Qin forges a civilization that endures 2,000 years and bears his name, China. It takes 9 years of brutal combat for the warrior to achieve his goal and become China's first emperor. The first emperor's story has passed into legend, but the truth lies hidden inside the greatest tomb on Earth.
That is the first emperor's tomb. And it's at the center of what is thought to be the largest burial complex in the world.
Covering 22 square miles, this Chinese archaeological site is bigger than Egypt's Valley of the Kings and packed with treasures richer than Tutankhamun's tomb. My name's Albert Lin. I'm a National Geographic explorer, and I specialize in using technology to discover what lies below the Earth's surface.
The emperor's tomb is right beneath my feet.
My surveying drone can reveal this place as never seen before. Today, the tomb is surrounded by top-secret Chinese military bases, and the army is nervous about what the drone might pick up.
Nobody's ever been allowed to fly here. This is unprecedented access.
The first emperor is under this mound, but the entire site is the size of Manhattan. A mile east is a huge hangar protecting the world-famous Terracotta Army. It's just one of 600 pits at this extraordinary tomb site. Here, archaeologists are making explosive new discoveries. Military technology, a skull that might belong to an executed prince, and even mutilated concubines. Finds that could rewrite the history books.
That's how huge this site is. Can you imagine building this for yourself? For your afterlife?
I'm going to investigate every inch of this site and discover the truth about the man buried beneath it. I'm starting my investigation into China's founding father at the most famous part of his tomb site. Wow. Wow. This is huge. It's so much bigger than I thought it would be. This is the Terracotta Army. 8,000 warriors buried over 2,000 years ago. One of the greatest wonders of the world. This is the first emperor's army. He ordered his real army to be recreated in clay and buried with him, ready to fight his battles in the afterlife.
Each face is individual and unique. Look at the scale of this place. It tells you a lot about the guy. You know, his ego, his vision for his afterlife. What an experience.
These warriors are set for battle, exactly like the Emperor's real army. Light infantry at the front, then heavy infantry, and even cavalry at the rear. 520 life-sized horses. It's a really incredible feeling to be here, standing in a place where nobody really gets access. I mean, we're at the center, at the heart of this unbelievable World Heritage Site, which is, in a lot of ways, the symbol of my own cultural heritage, my ancestry. I've been fascinated by the first emperor ever since I was a child. And our knowledge mostly came from one place. For over 2,000 years, the Chinese have learned about their founding father from a book. The official history of his reign, called the Shiji, was written 100 years after his death. This book tells of his epic battles, how he built an empire, how he created this place. But some of the achievements described here are so extraordinary that they become hard to believe. The legend describes the future emperor as a peerless warrior with an unstoppable army. But is the legend really true? Right now, teams are unearthing new treasures across the tomb site that reveal more about the man and his army.
What a privilege. Very few people have been down here. All of this. It's stone armor, intricately woven together. Look at that. You've got all the little chains tied together, almost like chainmail. And nobody really knows what they're for, but they think that it's the armor that would have been worn by the soldiers that would follow him into the afterlife. It's really cool.
So far, they've discovered 87 suits of armor, painstakingly assembled from tiny pieces of stone.
If they find things like this here, 30 feet below the surface, you gotta wonder what else lies beyond.
Other storerooms on site hide further evidence of his high-tech army. Look at that. Because few realize that originally, the terracotta warriors carried lethal weapons. A select number of the soldiers would have swords, but they were real functioning weapons. Even though it was buried over 2,000 years ago, it is still razor sharp. You can almost shave with it. In the years that followed the burial of this terracotta army, the site was looted, and a lot of the weapons were taken. They were taken for actual use in battle. And that's why they only found about, so far, 20 or so of these swords. You know, the first emperor, he spent his whole life conquering these 6 warring states to create one single empire, using weapons just like this. And he built this army to take into his afterlife, and you realize that he was still at war. He was still preparing himself for battle. The technology buried here is so extensive, so state-of-the-art, clear physical evidence supporting the legend of a supreme warrior king who equipped and organized his army like no other. But the army is just the start. Because here, he also buried his entire world. On this side, you also dug? I'm working with the Chinese archaeologists. Combining my drone data and their site maps, we can reveal what lies within this mega tomb complex. At the center is the emperor. In front of him, the living quarters, next to which archaeologists are making truly gruesome discoveries. To the east, his army. Southeast is a pit containing a body that could be his son and heir. And further out, grisly evidence of mass graves. Now, the brutal evidence emerging from this tomb site will revolutionize what we know about the man who made China. China's first emperor. The legend tells us that his vision for the tomb grew to epic proportions. The emperor was preparing for his afterlife in the same way he ruled his nation, with military precision. But there's a mystery. His vast workforce could create megastructures and build a huge mountain over his tomb. But no one in China had ever made life-sized statues before. So how did they suddenly create these 8,000 lifelike terracotta warriors? Most scholars believe that the Chinese developed them independently. But art historian Lucas Nickel has studied the terracotta army in great detail, and he has an astonishing new theory.
Yeah, thanks for meeting me here.
Well, we have a problem here. The terracotta warriors, they're totally exceptional and unique in Chinese history
You're saying that there was nothing like this before? It just showed up right with this one particular
Absolutely,
moment in
yeah.
history here?
They have occasionally small figurines, but that's absolutely not comparable what we find in the first emperor's tomb. But these kind of really highly complex human figures, life-size, that's something we haven't seen before in China.
These 10-inch figurines were made in China hundreds of years earlier. But there is nothing like this from the time of the emperor. Then suddenly, the terracotta army mysteriously appears.
They just do it overnight. That is highly surprising.
Have you found an explanation?
Well, if we can't explain this as part of Chinese history, we have, of course, to look for a foreign source. But we also have this. Have a look at that. These are sculptures.
Lucas believes that the source was the Greeks.
Asia, that is just on the rocks.
He has brought photographs of Greek statues that were found in Central Asia.
That is
Statues dated to the same era as the first emperor.
This is what the Greeks left
look at
in
that.
Central Asia. Yeah, that is just north of the Oxus River in southern Uzbekistan, yeah, just across the border from Afghanistan. Look at those features. It's the same idea. They try to make a totally believable human face.
I mean, when you look at the different features here, like the hair, you compare it to the hair up there,
Right.
and the emphasis on facial realism.
Geographically, yeah, and the Chinese and Greek cultures came very close to each other at this time. So communication was actually possible. They may have talked to each other.
We have to look towards our actual understanding of the timeline of East-West communication and rethink that.
Absolutely, that's right. These warriors force us to reconsider how East-West contact started.
The historical texts shed more light on this mystery. We're told, in 221 BC, 12 foreign statues appear at China's western border. A 100 years earlier, Alexander the Great had used statues to unify his newly conquered Greek Empire. The statues were a propaganda tool. And the suggestion is that the first emperor also recognizes their power. According to the legend, he orders 12 giant statues for his new capital city. But he also finds another use for them.
这应该被用于修建真的皇陵，几千个一样的。真要带领他们去统治另外一个世界。
遵命，陛下。需要多少？
真要成千上万个。李斯，还有军队。
是的，陛下。
But who exactly was making these statues? In the 3rd century BC, the Greek and Chinese civilizations were much closer than you might think. So were Greek statue makers traveling to the new Chinese empire and working there? If Lucas is right, then the first direct contact between East and West would have happened up to 1,500 years earlier than we tend to believe. It's an explosive theory, and if correct, it'd be rewriting the history books. Forensic evidence is coming out at the site that I'm keen to investigate. Archaeologists have found a mysterious skull in one mass grave. It could be key to our investigation. Now, to the untrained eye, it looks like any of the other skulls that we've seen here. But I've been told that this one is different. They're not typically Chinese features. Could this be a Westerner buried at the first emperor's tomb site? I've sent detailed measurements of the skull to experts at Scotland's Dundee University. They're going to reconstruct the head and trace its origins. Experts at Dundee University have spent weeks analyzing it. I'm about to find out what they've discovered.
Hey, Chris.
How's it going?
Chris, you sent us a model of what you've made, and I haven't seen it yet. So let's take a look. It's a little creepy, you know? I mean, staring at this person who, it's so lifelike.
So where would you place him in your expert analysis?
There's so many shape features of the skull that are East Asian, and then there's this sort of bridge to the nose and this brow ridge. It's not common in an East Asian population. This is actually a Chinese skull from a medical specimen. So you can see the difference between this nose and this.
Oh, yeah. So it
Yeah,
is.
we're talking this brow ridge and nose here.
So the analysis that you're describing is basically the facial features around the brow ridge and the nose are non-typical Asian features.
The skull overall is East Asian in appearance, but with a stronger than normal brow ridge and more projecting kind of nose than you'd normally expect.
This isn't conclusive proof, but it is plausible evidence that there may have been outsiders at the tomb site. And it supports the controversial theory that the first emperor imported foreigners and foreign ideas. In conservative China, that would have been shocking. This is the first time a Chinese ruler has created lifelike statues for his tomb.
他眼睛看着我，像是要活过来一样。
会的，他会的。
According to legend, the emperor grows increasingly paranoid. Fearing death, he orders his court to find the secret of immortality. And what they give him is mercury. His medics believe that it's the elixir of life.
可以使陛下长生不老。
In fact, mercury is a poison that will slowly destroy the very fabric of a person's brain and drive them insane. Sliding into madness, the emperor orders that no one is to know where he is, including his ministers. The first emperor's mental decline threatens the future of China. And the Prime Minister decides to act. He plots to put the Emperor's youngest son, Hu Hai, in power.
他已经疯了，他会将我等所有人都处死的。
不知父皇是否已经册立了太子？
还未。我们得确保太子是殿下民意。
According to legend, what happens next will tear apart the Emperor's family and plunge his empire into bloody warfare. I'm on the trail of a recent discovery that reveals how the reign of China's first emperor ended in bloodshed and brutality. I've heard about a set of 2,000-year-old scrolls that were found by chance on the Hong Kong black market. Written 100 years after the emperor's death, they describe his final moments.
这个先看第一，这是
To ensure their survival, they have to be kept in water. Can I see it?
赵正书，赵正就是秦始皇。
Wow. Okay, so the fate of China came down to this one moment, the decision of who would take on the throne and follow in the first emperor's footsteps. And what these scrolls describe is that it was a coup. After 11 years on the throne, he is dying. The Prime Minister and the Emperor's youngest son, Hu Hai, act fast.
父皇，您是知道的，儿臣一直是忠诚于您的儿子啊。而李斯是忠诚于您的臣子，有什么事？父皇。
The successor is named just in time.
父皇，父皇，
你知道该怎么办了吧？
我知道，但我需要时间。现在，不要跟任何人透露父皇的死讯。
In 210 BC, the emperor dies. But the story is far from over. The Prime Minister and Hu Hai keep the emperor's death a secret while they plot their next move. Fu Su, the emperor's eldest son and rightful heir to the throne, has been at the Great Wall defending the empire. He's the greatest threat to Hu Hai's bid for power.
得啦吧，老王娘可以。报上名来，大胆！这是大秦的扶苏公子。
坐下！你们什么人敢抓我？不要命了，敢抓我！大胆！
The legend tells us that Fusu committed suicide. But the recently discovered ancient scrolls reveal a shocking twist.
秦王
Hu Hai
佛听，
didn't listen,
遂行其意，
did as he wished,
杀其兄扶苏。
and killed his brother Fusu, the rightful heir to the throne. Incredible. This is amazing. And it's also just wild to think that this actual written word has been locked away in time for 2,000 years, and I'm holding it in my hand now. Incredible. The scrolls are a vital clue, but to prove exactly what happened, we need hard physical evidence. And now, the archaeologists at the tomb have revealed an extraordinary find.
Wow. We're looking at the skull of what could be the murdered heir to the throne of China. Oh, man. Look at that.
I'm uncovering gruesome evidence of what might have happened to the eldest son of China's first emperor.
This right here is the tip of an arrow. Looking at the trajectory of this arrowhead, which comes in at an angle like this, up to the jugular, it really indicates that this was a short-range kill. And what kind of weapon would do this? Oh, really? A crossbow?
Yes.
So we're talking about a crossbow at short range, pulling in on this guy whose head is probably on the ground at this point, right through the jugular here. And it's incredibly deeply embedded within that bone. What we're talking about here is an execution-style kill. Seeing this arrowhead embedded in this skull just tells you something about how ruthless that moment was, a moment which defined the course of history.
The scrolls say that Hu Hai's bid for power didn't end with killing his eldest brother. He murdered all of his siblings. Buried with this skull were the remains of 6 others. All were murdered and deposited to the east of the emperor's tomb. And according to legend, that was only the beginning of the bloodbath. The first emperor never married, but had many concubines.
你们都准备好了没？准备好了，赶快跟我走啊！
走。
So far, Hu Hai has eliminated any sibling who could challenge his rise to power. He now ensures that all remaining threats to his rule are neutralized, and that even includes concubines who might be carrying the first emperor's child.
你到底要带我们去哪儿啊？陛下为什么会在这种地方？
走。
Over 2,000 years later, possibly the most disturbing and horrifying discovery of all has been unearthed on the tomb site. The bones of young women. Their remains tell the story of the brutal end of females who may have been carrying the emperor's unborn heirs. I'm meeting with Huan Yang, one of the archaeologists working on this discovery, to find out what really happened.
Very far from it.
So tell me the story about the skull.
I believe they're concubines of the emperor.
What are the concubines?
Yeah. I know they're girls, they're young age, and they have jewelries.
You found jewelry there.
Yeah. Do you want to see the jewelry?
Yeah.
Okay. Those is jewelry.
What is that? Is it pearls?
They're gold and pearls.
Oh, that's beautiful.
They're made very well. Even today, they're good quality pearls.
Yeah, they're still iridescent. They still radiate the light. Jewelry that would be of the level of a concubine of the first emperor, potentially.
Yeah, it belongs to some very high rank woman.
I mean, what happened to these women?
I feel a little bit angry about this. They're dying in a very brutal way.
这到底是什么地方？陛下现在在哪儿？
这就是皇帝。父皇他已经死了。他既然那么喜欢你，真香啊！你可以陪他去了吧，把他们都杀了。
It's very weird. I found this pole, the leg bones just like this.
Yeah.
This one, and this side another one.
Near the skull.
Near the skull, it's just like a cross.
Must have been a horrible end.
It never happened before. At least we never found it.
These young women weren't just killed, they were mutilated.
Someone asked me, do you think they were broken after they die or before they die? I can't imagine that the human will cut those girls when they're alive.
This young woman is just the latest victim to be unearthed. Her only crime was being close to the dead emperor. The archaeologists have discovered 98 more tombs. So far, they've excavated 10, and each one contains the mutilated remains of a young woman. What we've discovered indicates that even some of the most extraordinary claims written in the historical record are true.
What about the biggest legend of all? The one that describes the treasures buried within the first emperor's tomb. Could that be true too?
The official history, the Shiji, describes it in great detail. It offers these tantalizing clues like mercury was used to fashion imitations of 100 rivers, constructed in such a way that they seemed to flow. There's jewels embedded in the ceiling to make the constellations glitter at night. That there's crossbows rigged throughout the ceiling of the tomb itself to make sure that anybody trying to enter afterwards would be killed. But how much of that is true? To find out, I've come to speak to the tomb site's chief archaeologist, Professor Jiang.
Over here?
For the last 2 years, he and his team have been analyzing the tomb complex, using core sampling, ground-penetrating radar, and remote sensing technologies.
You're trying to find more information with the probes, with the geophysics.
Yeah， 先弄清楚整个这个包括这个风头在内的整个大遗址的整个遗址的具体结构。
There is supposed to be a big cavity, a large void.
我们实际上就站在秦始皇陵这个封土的最中心的位置上面。
With the data that they have collected so far, the archaeologists believe that the tomb might still be intact. Using this data, we can now reveal what lies below. This pyramid-shaped mountain is entirely man-made. Each side is 1/4 mile long. Within it, a stone structure 410 feet wide, 476 feet long, with walls 45 feet tall. At the base is an inverted pyramid, descending further into the ground. The burial chamber lies at the very bottom. And there is one piece of evidence to suggest that the greatest legend about the tomb is true. This whole pyramid is riddled with high concentrations of mercury, consistent with there being rivers of liquid metal below. Within this tomb lies a man of vision and ruthless determination. A military leader who achieves the seemingly impossible, but also cruel, murderous, and eventually mad, unifying 7 warring states to form China. He has the vision for the Great Wall and builds this extraordinary tomb complex, the largest in the world. Above all, he laid the foundations of his nation.
He believed it would endure for 10,000 generations. And in a sense, he might be right. Even though his dynasty didn't last past the second emperor, his vision did. This nation, his nation, China, lives on.